Returning to the fray of Robattle, with a samurai's garb and a renewed sense of inner focus from the days of Medarot Navi. It is KWG07M, the Masked Kuwagata, with a kit of Blowaway, double laser sword, biped legs, and the leg ability of Voltage, which buffs all parts stats minus armor for every melee skill used, stacking 5 times. Now, Kabuto Benimaru, much like Kuwagata Baizan, are most certainly models that we have seen in the game before, and Baizan here is most certainly no exception. He's been in the game for a hot minute, and he got a TP bonus on top of that, no less, to help keep him especially relevant in current competitive meta. But nothing certainly prepared anyone for him donning samurai garb with a new set of skills to ensure that every hit lands is the epitome and peak of the training he's amassed and practiced with over the course of several years. Blow Away on the head part is a melee attribute skill that has a very unique damage condition to it. Upon attacking the target, it will actually push the enemy away from the command line. So this means that the Masked Kuwagata has a hand in crowd control. This means that he's able to push people away from the line either to stall their heating phases and possibly even get someone into the line faster than they would if he times it correctly. Inversely though, this does also mean that if he mistimes it or the enemy ends up being faster than he anticipated, this also means that he may accidentally accelerate their cooldown phase so they can instantly begin their next heating phase and next turn that almost instantaneously. So some caution and some practice timing will be advised if you plan to use this skill at its zenith. And it's still going to be a very powerful skill all the same. Laser Sword on both arms is a brand new skill being introduced into the game, and simply explained, it kind of falls into the same vein as, say, Beam Sword. But there are a number of very notable differences between the iconic Beam Sword that we've had pretty much since launch of the game and how Laser Sword instead will behave. The first of which is, as laser instead of beam, as an object attribute skill, it means it gets a times 1.5 damage bonus and a times 2 damage bonus at 30% and 100% charge respectively. So now you're probably going to be looking at this and going, but Kuro, why would the lower damage bonus mean Laser Sword is any good? Well, that's because it trades the higher damage for defense ignore. So while Beam Sword may have a higher damage output on paper, defense ignore means that Laser Sword will bypass any damage resistances or reduce damage from the leg's melee or shoot resist to guarantee that every cut that lands is going to be extremely deep and just as painful. This also means that unlike other object attribute skills which are extremely CG reliant, and to a point actually is one of the original Kuwagata Baizan's major weaknesses, this actually makes Laser Sword not necessarily as reliant on CG as it was before, making it much more user-friendly across the board. However, it is also worth noting that in trade of this higher defense ignore and slightly lower damage modifier, it does mean that you also cannot dodge or defend while in cooldown. So some caution is going to be advised if you plan to use these skills at their fullest, and really take advantage of that higher damage and defense ignore on top of that. Biped legs means that the Masked Kuwagata will have very solid coverage across all terrains with fairly rounded stats, but unfortunately, much like it was with the Masked Kabuto and even the original Beetle Boys, they are still rather squishy as far as HP and damage reduction is concerned. Base mobility at 899 is very good though, as it means that he's not going to have any problems running back and forth of the line before any modifiers come into play. And an evade of 1304 is really nice though, as this means that as long as he doesn't have a no dodge penalty on a cooldown, he is able to run back and forth in the line and even dodge or graze more or less as he pleases, as long as the enemy doesn't have a super success or a really high success that counteracts this. A melee resist of 1420 means that he can certainly hold his own up close and personal fairly well, and a shoot resist of 770, it's not great, but he's still able to hold his own fairly well, arguably a lot better than the Masked Kabuto can as far as his damage reduction is concerned. But the enemy taking pot shots from afar is definitely going to be cutting this small Kuwagata down to size faster than you would really prefer. As far as armor is concerned though, he is packing 3779 for the head, arms at 3479 each, and legs at 3839. So he is definitely better guarded and better in the HP department than the Masked Kabuto is. but with the extra cowling and garb that he's wearing, I guess you can kind of justify it for that same reason. But with a base damage of 2473 for blowaway means that attack is going to be pretty remarkably painful, and base damage for double beam sword at 1510 on the right arm and 1731 for the left means that it's going to be extremely powerful even before the defense ignore kicks in, let alone any damage modifiers from CG Reliance. However, the big problem here I do want to mention is that they are kind of on the slower end, with heating and cooling between the high 400s, low 500s to the low 600s. So you are going to have to kind of time this really carefully. And with success stats both below 1,000, it does mean that the masked Kuwagata is going to be just a little bit blind if he's trying to attack someone who's particularly dodgy. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I honestly still have to rate the masked Kuwagata a pretty well-rounded 7 out of 10. While a lot of his weaknesses with his relatively low damage reduction and slightly better HP than masked Kabuto, there are still a number of weaknesses that he is actually able to counter on his own the longer the fight drags on, and that's because of voltage. Unlike other leg abilities that grant him a leg stats plus for maintaining certain bonuses, voltage, on the other hand, directly benefits his head and legs exclusively. For every melee attack used, his heating, his cooling, his success, and his power of all of his head and his arms goes up, and that effect stacks 5 times. So while he may not be super good on paper here as far as his heat, cool, and success is concerned, the longer he's allowed to live on the field, he progressively and basically learns. So that means that after about 2 or 3 swipes, even if the enemy grazes, he learns the enemy pattern and progressively gets more likely to land hits consistently and do so faster with an improved heating time and a reduced cooldown time. As mixed parts, though, I do have to rate him equally at a 7 out of 10 for these same reasons. While Kuwagata Baizan doesn't necessarily fix his CG Reliance issue with the masked Kuwagata version, he does actually give himself a perk with the defense ignore that makes it a lot easier to justify and forgive, and just as easy to use. Laser Sword can be extremely powerful with that defense ignore, even with the lower damage bonuses that you get from CG Reliance. And Biped Legs with Voltage means that for every melee attack used, you get slightly faster and more powerful up to 5 times. And then, of course, with Blow Away for your hand and damage control. The bottom line is that Kuwagata Baizan definitely took all these years of practicing and training and TP bonuses that were available to him through the course of Medarot S, and decided to don his samurai garb from Medarot Navi to put all the skills he learned, practiced, and trained for to test.